About probably 2:30 this afternoon or 3 o'clock when we hit that wall, and we'll all hit it. So, but if y'all would, Senator Walker, you mind leading us in prayer? Thank you.
Number 10. Good morning, everyone. If you would, please bow with me. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the abundant blessings you give us. We thank you for this great state and the people gathered here in this room that are working hard to improve the lives of our citizens, Lord. We pray that you will bless us, guide us, give us wisdom and discernment, and keep everyone here and their families safe. In Christ's name we pray, amen.
Wonderful. Thank you, Senator. We have got the governor's budget here, but we also, many of you probably have got the House and the governor's budget here. And those of you that do have it, if you want to speak off of the governor's and House version, that'd be wonderful. Just let us know ahead of time, and just keep us just be patient with us as we fumble through all these pages. So, and keep in mind too, we're gonna try to end this in 2 hours, and so if you would, unless, ma'am.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, that was me. You said 2 hours and it threw me off.
Okay. Well, well, I know that we got people with other obligations, and I know that some of our senators will have to leave, and I've got to leave right at the end of 2 hours also. So let's kind of keep it like that. Not that everything we hear this morning is not important. As y'all well know, we wouldn't be here this early in the morning if it wasn't important. But please just keep us. Let's try to keep it rolling. So we're going to start off this morning with the Georgia Professional Standards Commission. Right here. And we've only got one of these mics working, so if you bring up two people, we're going to have to share the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hope everyone's doing well this morning. It's my privilege this morning to present our budget. I am on page 27. I have the governor's budget, page 27. Item 183.4 is what I'm looking at, working off of.
Hold on just a second.
Yes, sir.
So, what's the difference between? So, is it on 33 or 27? 27. Okay, go on, please, sir.
Okay. And money was included by the House Appropriation Committee, but you see the anticipated annual operating cost of being on the cloud. That's really the only difference that we have. All the other changes to our budget are statewide changes, but we are moving toward the cloud right now. We have a 25-year-old system, so we're making some big changes having to go through, and moving to the cloud. The estimated cost is a little over $125,000, $125,838. The governor's recommendation is an addition of $69,000 to help us meet that cost. We are the remainder of that money, we are providing that money out of our budget to do that with. But we are at a situation, we have over 312,000 people in the state of Georgia that have certificates. And so with a 25-year-old system, you can imagine what we need to do. We're still operating off servers. And to be honest with you, in Twin Towers, we're running out of room. And it's just time security wise and everything else. We go back to 1940 with certificates. And so moving to the cloud is the first step that we're going to do, and then we're changing everything over after that. And we've been working with GTA with that. So that's really our budget. And the only ask besides the state is the money to move toward the cloud, the $69,000.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. Thank you, sir. Now, the Governor's Office Student Achievement. This lady and I have spent a lot of time together over the last year. Gosh, no, and she's been great. I mean, I've been very impressed with this office and the work they do. And so, Ms. Hawkins, if you would, please.
Absolutely. Good morning, Mr. Chair, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. Good morning, members. Top of the morning. Love being here so
Thank you.
early, don't you? I'm working from the governor's budget on pages 28 and 29, beginning at 184.1. And last year, with your wisdom, you divided our budget out into 3 different line items. And so we're looking at 184.1, 185.1, and 186.1. The first part of that is what I call the main GOSA budget, which is all the admin, growing readers, anything related to research or statutory responsibilities. On 185.1, this is the Governor's Governor's School Leadership Academy. And then 186 is the Governor's Honors Program. There are no changes from the Governor's original budget, but for the House put a $1 million infusion into the main budget for digital literacy. And I don't know a whole lot about that. I don't know the genesis, but I do know it's an off-the-shelf program that Utah, Idaho, and Michigan have been using. And
Ms. Hawkins, would you back up and restate what you just said again? Let us kind of catch up with what you're talking about,
Oh,
the
sure.
$1 million.
Sure. So yesterday, when the House presented its budget, there was an additional $1 million added to GOSA's main budget for the purpose of digital literacy. And it's an off-the-shelf program that's been used in Utah, Idaho, and Michigan for several years. I, of course, inquired with the House Budget Office. They gave me the background that they knew. I don't know any more than that.
Senator Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we add additional monies for literacy, we just passed a bill. Was that your bill, Ms.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Hickman? And it dealt with literacy as well. Now, this program of $1 million, now who asked for that?
I don't know.
We'll just have to do more work on that.
Yeah, a whole lot of work, because we're just throwing money out there and we're not knowing where
That's
it's
true.
going and who it's going to.
That's right.
And the governor and the chancellor mentioned all of the different programs that we already have in education, and none of them seem to be working. We're still at ground zero for literacy. So,
And if I may, I agree with you. I don't think we need another program in Georgia.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Sims. Great question. Yes, sir. Which one? Oh, one.
Program.
Oh, 7. Senator Parent.
Thank you, Chairman Hickman. Thanks, Joy. Can you just repeat for those of us who are getting settled, and apologies for that, where this line item, where this $1 million is?
It's so I don't have the most current tracking sheet.
Looks like Austin here is helping me.
Thank you,
I'll just say
Austin.
it once we find it, maybe. I see it. Okay, so 27.9.4.
Oh, okay.
So we'll find out who
Austin,
is
I can
interested in
share with
that.
you the write-up that House sent me.
Yeah, the actual title says provide funds to support the implementation of a digital learning-based pre-K through 5 program that teaches language and literacy curriculum for all students to increase their ability to meet grade level reading standards. And I personally agree with Senator Sims on that. I think we got to look a little bit further into that. Our Senate Bill 211, as you well know, is a comprehensive study looking at birth through post-secondary and determine what we need to do. So thank
That's
you,
right.
ma'am.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay.
Thank you. Before I go any further, I want to make a statement that we're talking about literacy. If y'all will, we had a great night last night on lawmakers. We had Representative Wade and Representative Ballard talk about the House bill, and Senator Parent and myself talked about the Senate bill, and I received some really good comments on our conversations. I think, what we've done on this, everybody knew there was a literacy problem, but we have now elevated it to make it very well known. And I get tired of hearing, and really do hear some of our superintendents. And when Ms. Hawkins and I was doing our presentation, we met with probably over 58 superintendents during the summer at 5 different meetings. You would be surprised at the number of these superintendents that call education an expense. And it's not an expense, it's an investment in our future. And we actually, Representative Wade mentioned that last night, and so we obviously conclude with that. So thank you.
11.
Yeah. Senator Kilpatrick.
I guess I should have asked Ms. Hawkins when she was up here, but the $1 million program, is that the Mississippi program?
Ma'am, that is not. My understanding is 3 other states, Idaho, Utah, and Michigan. Mississippi is more of a holistic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. We are awake this morning, aren't we? That's cool. Just about a little bit. Employees Retirement System in Georgia. And Jim will be working off of the House and the governor's version. So tell us what line and all you in here.
So the House document is section 25, lines 25.1 through 25.4.2. The document that I have says page 53 for what that's worth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Y'all there? Okay. Senator Dixon has joined us. Thank you. Morning. Yes, sir. Go.
Morning, Jim Potvin, Executive Director, Employees Retirement System of Georgia. I'm going to call your attention first to 25.2, the Georgia Military Pension Fund. The amount originally proposed in the governor's recommendations was actually the amount that was due for the actuarial contribution for the system for last year. The updated amount for this year is slightly lower by that $47,000 number. So we've gone ahead and communicated that to the House, and that's included in their recommendation. For the public school employees retirement system, there are a few things going on here. Last year's total of $35 million or $35.1 million included not only the actuarial contribution that was required by the previous year's valuation report, but also some additional money that needed to be put into fund increases in the benefit multiplier, as this body is allowed to do. So that total of $35.1 million needs to change. The actual contribution that's required for this year is $29.5 million. But they are going to recommend an increase of 50 cents to the multiplier from 16 to 16.50. That's the current maximum allowed under statute. I know that there are some bills that are floating around out there that would make changes to that maximum or even eliminate it as a consideration, and then it would just be about funding it. For now, this is the most that we can do for this year, and that's what the 2.8 million that's being added is for. And then the 5.6 that's coming out is for previous years' budgetary increases that are now baked into the overall actuarial contribution. So the final total is $32.3 million.
Okay.
Is that
Oh, wait.
any
Senator
questions
Walker.
about that one?
Mr. Chairman.
Wait. Well, you just got to talk loud.
Okay, I'm really appreciative to the House of adding the money for the PSERS participants. I just want to reiterate for the committee, we're talking about 50 cents
That's right.
per year of service.
That's right.
For folks that are work 30 years, they're now getting $480 a month. These are your school bus drivers, cafeteria workers, custodians, maintenance people that really make our schools operate. They're essential, and I'm delighted to see that, and I hope we're going to increase the cap or remove the cap going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
go,
then,
please.
yes, sir.
Good.
Under system administration, there are a couple of changes. The less significant, the $7,000 reduction, is just removing funding for a bill that didn't pass a couple of years ago. So that's a relatively minor thing. Of more interest is the $26.75 million line item. So as you are undoubtedly aware, this year, the final FY23 amended budget includes a $26.7 million cash infusion to the ERS that we are going to turn around and send directly to all of our retirees in the form of a one-time payment, intended essentially to bolster what those retirees can receive in terms of some form of cost of living type of an adjustment. And what the House is proposing is that we duplicate that that cash infusion in FY24 as well and do a similar payment.
Senator Ulrich.
Thank you, and good morning. I had a question about it. It reads, provide for an annual benefit adjustment. What does that language actually mean? Because it's a one-time, I mean, this is incorrect language to describe what we're doing.
I would agree with that. I think it's slightly misleading. It is intended to be paid out in a one-time at the end of fiscal year 24.
So it should, to reflect reality, read differently than that. It should set it.
Provide for a one-time payment to retired state
A
employees or
one-time
something like
payment,
that.
that's right.
Thank you. Yeah. No. You.
But
I
it's
think-
going in the big budget, so it becomes part of continuation. Is that correct, or is it going to be pulled back out?
That is technically correct. I don't want to speak for FY25 or beyond. It would be my hope that it would become part of continuation.
So maybe that's why they phrased it that way, is in hopes that it becomes part of the.
I would like to point out as well, we have begun to receive pre-funding toward a true annual cost of living increase. That pre-funding at this point provides for a variable increase, which in some years, like this year, will likely be quite small. So what I believe they're trying to do is find a way to supplement that, especially in the years when the regular pre-funding is going to result in a lower number.
Yeah, I just will, again, enter the plea, Mr. Chair, if I'm recognized, at a dinner occasion last night, I was with a person who retired after 30 years and who is getting 11-year-old aged pension. When we set up the Social Security system in this country, we put in a cost of living at some point. And everybody sees it, and it's distributed, and it's the way to keep up with the rising cost of living. We have done a disservice to an entire generation of state retirees, and the pain is real and authentic. I think we had on our desk earlier this week 1,000 retirees responded to a poll that was done, a survey, and described how they were challenged to get by and had to rely on children and skip medicine. And there's a whole story to be told. We have a lot to do today, and I'm not going to talk about this the entirety, but I just think we have to face and confront that fundamental flawed decision in 2009 to take out the language for cost of living for our retirees, which read 3% cost of living was a part of the guarantee that's been in the law for 40 years at least. Mm-hmm. So I just think we have to challenge ourselves and all those who work on this budget to repair that damage. We have families just going down the tubes from that, as a result of that decision. I'm going to stop, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your indulgence.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. I
But,
think we,
again, I was talking to a real live person last night who's living that reality. And they're all across our state, and they've given for a lifetime. And they were made a promise, which we have not kept.
thank you. And I think we all do up here have been very, very sensitive about that, and we've heard a lot of conversation from a lot of our constituents, how situation. So hopefully, along with us and Jim, we can work. This is a start, but we got a long ways to go, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments?
I have no other comments.
Any questions? A lot of like this up here, so I guess we're in good shape. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Turn off my light.
Teachers Retirement System, Georgia. Oh, there he is. Mr. Evans, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Delight to be with you this morning. I'm going to be speaking from the Senate Budget Document, Section 45, page 56, specifically lines 341, 100, and hopefully I can help you make up a little bit of time because this is one of the numbers that goes down every year. It only represents a cost of living adjustment that was built into a continuation fund of systems that went in to the teachers' retirement system back in the 1970s. We're down to only 7 of these people left, and last year the number was 115,000. For FY24 will be 83,000. Question is as this number continues to diminish each year, will it run out before I do? And don't know whether that'll be the case or not, but anyway, that is the budget number that impacts your budget. You look at our overall agency budget of $51 million. You break that down, that figures out the cost to administer the teacher's retirement system of basically about $100 per member. So it's pretty relatively inexpensive number. Obviously, this does not reflect the ADEC, the actuarial determined employee contribution that goes to our employers and then comes back to us. But with that, Mr. Chairman, committee members, unless you have questions, that's what I have.
Any questions? Good morning. Yeah, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank
Have a great day.
Next on the item is Georgia Non-Public Post-Secondary Education Committee. There we go. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I'm Kirk Shook. I'm the Executive Director of the Non-Public Post-Secondary Education Commission. We are the state agency that regulates all the private colleges. Most folks don't know that, so I want to make sure you knew that.
Thank you.
I am, if you're on the Senate tracking sheet, it's 340.1. If you're on the House tracking sheet, it's 44.19.1.
44.
44.19.1 on the House tracking sheet.
Okay. Hold on just a second. Okay.
Very straightforward. This is what the governor recommended. It's also what the House recommended. This is just the cost of living adjustment for employees, the $2,000 plus the administrative changes there. So that's all that we have. But I did want to note, if you look at the appropriation document, you see that while we're appropriated $1 million, about $1 million in state funds, they have listed we have about $1.5 million in operating funds. So about 50% of our budget of what we spend on programs like what Mr. Arthur talked about earlier, them moving to digitization and all those things, we fund with fees that come in to us. So a big chunk of what we operate on and how we serve the public and how we do our regulation occurs through the fees that we bring in. So I want to make sure that was noted. So there's a big chunk that's not appropriated to us that we still spend to enforce our code. And that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? either we're doing a great job or our committee needs a lot of coffee. One.
That's right. Well, you all need to get on whatever Buster's on. I mean, he's the one that's just bouncing off the walls. So,
Yeah.
good to see
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, sir. Georgia Research Alliance. There we go. Good morning.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members.
Good morning.
Hey there. So our information can be found on the House Tracking Documents, Section 41.9, under
Say it, 41.1?
.9,
41.9.
or the Governor's Recommendation, which is page 33, and it would be Sections 288.1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
So there's a $1.25 million appropriation in the current year that has been taken out. It was a one-time appropriation for the Precision Ag Initiative at the University of Georgia. And this is the third year, Mr. Chairman and members, that the Research Alliance has received a one-time investment for a particular project. In 2021, we received funds for the Isaacson Parkinson Chair at the University of Georgia. The next year, we received some funding to create a sickle cell disease chair, which is a joint chair at Morehouse School of Medicine, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and Emory University. In the current year, then we have the Precision Ag Chair, and by the way, we're very appreciative of you forward funding $5 million in bonds in cash in the amended budget this year. We're grateful for that. If I could make the case that we do have a wonderful opportunity in Athens right now to recruit a cluster of 3 eminent scholars. We've never recruited a cluster of 3 folks to the vet med school. These are people in avian flu and vaccine development. And if we were able to recruit these 3 folks, it would make the vet school at UGA the #1 college among veterinary medicine schools in the country. This team of 3 would bring $50 million in new research grants and contracts with them. So if there were a way we could keep that one-time funding, again, another one-time request for this special project, that would be wonderful.
You mentioned veterinary school, and of course, we all know the elite veterinary school we got. And of course, my concern is, as we all know, that we have children from Georgia that go to Kansas, to other states, to veterinary school, Alabama, and that's I've still got a real issue with that. Person got an issue with that. So. Senator Walker, you have an issue with that too?
I do. That's why I support her request.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, we think it will enhance the educational and training that the university provides, and they have increased their enrollment in the last couple of years. They're working hard to expand opportunities for incoming students in our state.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions, Senator Walker?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know. You got it working.
Yeah.
I just appreciate the good work of GRA, and I think a one-time $2 million investment to get these 3 eminent scholars that bring $50 million in grant funding with them is a wonderful investment for the state. I hope we can add that.
Yeah.
The #1 industry of the state.
Yeah. Agriculture. That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next one is the Georgia Commission on Holocaust, and I think Senator Kirkpatrick's going to speak on that.
Yes, as you probably know, the Commission on the Holocaust is administratively attached to USG, and I believe they're going to probably touch on that. There are two senators that are legislative liaisons to the commission, myself and Senator Harbison. And what has happened with them is they've had to move locations, and they're in the process of not only doing a public-private partnership to build a new building in Sandy Springs, but there's going to be a new updated Anne Frank exhibit. And so this is in order to get that off the ground. So I may have to leave to present a bill before USG talks, so that's why I wanted to just mention that I'm in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Do we have anybody here from the Georgia Commission on Holocaust? Do not. Okay, thank you. I just didn't want to overlook anybody. Georgia Public Telecommunications Commission.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, good
nice
morning,
to see you. I'll make it easy for you. We're on page 90 of 117 on the House budget. We are section 41.24. And as you can see there are no additional increases outside of the state increases, the cost of living adjustment, and the administrative adjustments there. I would say we do have some bond requests. Do we want to go through those?
Yeah, yes, yes, sir, that'd be great.
Okay, those are on page 113.
We don't have those. Won't you just go through?
Oh, sure, yeah. So the first one is 52,327, which is a bond for it's in the amount of $1,730,000. That is for a tower lighting upgrade. So GPB, we have approximately 24 towers around the state of Georgia. They all need a light on the top so that planes don't hit them. It's an FAA regulation. We currently don't have them. So this is just an overall project to put those lights on the towers around the state.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The second is a bond of $710,000 to replace our second chiller in headquarters. We have two chillers in the headquarters. We replaced the first one last year. The second one is living on the edge, and it is 25 years old, so it needs to be replaced desperately. And the third is $250,000 for a new FM radio station that we have acquired in Bainbridge, Georgia, which will essentially give us virtually 100% coverage in the state of Georgia.
Senator Sims, did you know that? Yeah. You know, that's some of all of our coverage, all of our thought process is we have got to make every part of Georgia accessible for everything. And we just can't have little pockets here and there, and thank you for doing that.
Of course. Any questions? Or?
Senator Parent? Nothing? Well, thank you. Tell the ladies that did our makeup last night.
Yeah.
We really do appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, you bet.
We probably need them.
They're the best.
I personally need them more often than just last night.
Well, thank you so much. And
They're nationally ranked, the makeup.
yes, yeah, probably you were done by an Emmy-winning makeup artist last night, which is great.
Thank you
so
sir.
much. Appreciate your
Thank you.
support.
Very good. Very professional organization. Thank you. Next on the list is Georgia Military College. Thank you, sir, for being here.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members. Sir, I'll be going to page 90 of the House bill, going to section 41.22.
Hold on just a second.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So page 90, section 41.22. As you know, Mr. Chairman, we're broken into two parts. I'll talk first about the junior college, and then next about our preparatory school, which is our K through 12 program. So under the military junior college there, it's not a formula-driven program, so what the governor put forth is the same thing that the House had. So there's no change.
Correct.
The next one is 41.23. That's payments to the preparatory school, which is the K through 12 program. It does have a formula based at a lower percentage, and there's only about a $40,000 difference there between the governor's budget and the House that was done.
So there's a difference between the only enrollment growth between what the governor projected and what the House had projected, correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. And then, okay, good. Thank you.
And that preparatory school continues to do exceptionally well, as the junior college. You know, if you looked at the graduation rates, transfer rates, we continue to climb. And as a predominantly black institution, we're real proud of what we're able to do there in the junior college for the state of Georgia.
Just a general question. How many of those graduates move on to the four-year college? What percentage?
Sir, we out of our graduates, 70% will go to a region school to continue with their four-year education.
Yeah.
70%?
Yes, ma'am. 70%. We track that pretty closely. And the reason we're able to, we whatever the Regents is doing in education, we ensure we model that and follow it so that it's a seamless transfer for all our students to move right in and start as a junior and not have to do any additional courses. And we've got over 50 articulation agreements in the state of Georgia to ensure that availability for our students.
Do most of them transfer to in Georgia schools?
Oh, yes, sir.
They do?
Oh, almost. So we're about 93%, 94% Georgia-based residents. The 7% that are not are mostly in our ROTC program sent to us by the federal government from across the United States for ROTC.
Okay.
But there's very few that come to our school from out of state.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, the one thing that I do want to just draw to everybody's attention, there is on page 114 under the bonds.
No, under the bonds. That's in the other.
So on page
We don't have that.
114.
We don't have that. That's right, we don't have that.
Oh, okay, sir. It's 50.2.3.44, and that's an addition of $1 million towards the construction of our student services and academic support center. We did make a request for $2 million for that facility. Provided it to the governor's office last summer and OPB. We would still request the additional $1 million as a one-time thing to finish that construction support of for the junior college. So that building supports them. They're currently housed in 3 different homes that we've bought over time, and we'll take those 3 homes down when this facility's built and put them all into one building.
Okay.
So the other 2 capital projects that we had requested was we're taking a building that exists that's been condemned and cannot be used for students, and we have a bond that was approved last year, about $6.3 million, and we're doing a renovation and restoration of that, bringing it back into student use. So this November, December, the building will be finished, and it'll house part of our K through 12 program, and we are requesting the FF&E for that. It's not currently in the budget, so the furniture fixings and equipment, which would be about $817,000. Again, another one-time expense that we're requesting for that building that will be used strictly for educational purposes for 4th and 5th graders in that building. And then the last one, sir, is we don't receive annually any MRR funding. So we did submit a list of projects to the governor's office last year and OPB requesting $930,000 for this year, next coming year, for MRR purposes. We have about just over 600,000 square feet of state property. 370,000 of that is residential instruction space. And so we were just asking again this year if we could get $930,000 for MRR projects that were on the list that we submitted.
And what does the MRR stand for?
I'm sorry, sir. Maintenance, repair, and restoration, just the maintenance and upkeep of state-owned property that's used for instructional purposes, not every piece of state property, like it wouldn't be for our athletic gyms and all that, but it would be for state-owned property that's considered what they call residential instruction space.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
All right, sir.
Any questions of the committee? Thank you, sir.
All right.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Next is Department of Early Care and Learning, DECAL. Here we go.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman
morning,
and
morning.
members of the committee. I think it'll be easier to go from the House version because we're all on one page, which is page 43.
43.
Yes.
Okay, that's the top page for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're good. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So we are at the very top of that page, 22.1. Child Care Services is the first program where we have changes. Those first three changes, so 22.1 through 22.3, are all the statewide adjustments, including the $2,000 COLA for state employees, which we are very grateful for, and our employees are very grateful for as well. The one change I'll spend a little bit more time on is 22.1.4. And this is an increase in funds to reflect an adjustment in the FMAP from 66.02 to 65.89%, which is an addition of $1,045,000. So just as a little background, this is CCDF funding from the feds, which is our primary federal funding source for DECAL. As you can see, the FMAP is decreasing, which means our portion in state funds needs to increase by that little over $1 million so that we can draw down the full federal funds for DECAL operations. And these state funds that we do use are all used for our CAP subsidy program.
And go back and explain why the percentage decreased.
So that is a federal calculation. They recalculate it every year. I believe it's a state-by-state basis and based on per capita income.
Okay.
So they look at each state. It's the same thing for any type of federal matching program like Medicaid. They use the same FMAP, and it just changed this year, probably based on the income of our state. But that's not up to us, unfortunately.
So are you saying that because Georgia is growing so much and we got so many more jobs, our per capita income is increasing?
I'm assuming that has something to do with it.
So
It's a
our
very complicated formula that I don't understand completely.
So our federal government has recognized that the per capita income of our citizens is increasing because all the hard work
That's
that
right. The
all the
hardworking
legislators
Georgians.
and our
Right.
governor, lieutenant governor, and
That's
all
right.
they've done.
All these good paying jobs that are coming to Georgia. Yes, sir. I think that's probably a reflection of that. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just a little advertisement. Senator Parent?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. I have a question about where we are with CAPS. How many children are currently participating?
68,000.
Okay. And is it still a application process?
Yes, it is an application process. So obviously it's based on income and activity. And then we have 13 priority groups that you must fall into, which, as you know, range from a very low income priority group to foster care to student parents, so that we're making sure that we're serving those that need it the most.
How many applications do we tend to get in a?
I can tell you a week just because that's the most recent conversation I've had. I believe we get over 1,600 applications a week.
Okay.
And I can't annualize that for you that quickly. But on a regular basis, we serve about 50,000 children a year. Because of COVID dollars that we received, we're serving about 68,000 right now. So that's a one-time increase that we will gradually have to attrition back to 50,000 with our current when our funding
That's right,
gets back.
because we did put more money into CAPS during that.
Right. There's a tremendous amount of money that's going towards CAPS from our one-time COVID dollars.
But we're going to lose that.
We will at the end of September 2024. That money runs out.
Thank you.
Senator Say?
See, but thank you. I just wanted to thank you all for seeing the value in staying on top of drawing down federal dollars. We should never leave money on the table, and we know we can use it here. And besides, our children are 100% of our future.
You're right.
So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We spend every cent of our federal dollars.
First.
Or the state
First,
need to do
absolutely
that.
first.
Healthcare would be helpful if the state does it.
Ms. Jacobs, define early care and learning age-wise.
I would consider it as 0 to 5, so birth to age 5. We consider the work that we do primarily for birth to age 5 years old through Georgia Pre-K, basically.
Great. Thank you.
And then our next changes are on that same page, the pre-K kindergarten program, which is 22.3. So those first two changes, 22.1 through 22.2, are just those statewide adjustments again. So I'll start with 22.3.3, which is a reduction in formula funds for training and experience for pre-K teachers, a reduction of $174,000. So this reduction just reflects the actual training and experience that we're paying pre-K teachers. It's very similar to the K-12 training and experience you pay based on number of years and credential level. Pre-K continues to face teacher recruitment and retention issues, so we have fewer classrooms right now, and we have teachers that may not be certified or are newer to the field. And so this is just a reduction of the actual training and experience costs to our formula. The next item is 22.3.4. This is an increase in formula funds for classroom operations for pre-K, an addition of $14 million. So this will equate to an additional $3,676 to each pre-K classroom for their operating costs. And these are your typical operating costs, which are rent and mortgage, utilities, maintenance, equipment, and materials. This is about a 20% increase to operating. The last increase to this was 2.5% back in 22, and I know our programs will appreciate this, just giving the rising cost of doing business these days. So that's an increase of $14 million. The next item is 22.3.5, and this is an increase in funds to adjust the state-based salary for teachers, pre-K teachers, and assistant teachers by $2,000. So we appreciate the governor in the House supporting our teachers just like he has K-12 teachers, and it's an additional of $20.6 million. So this will make the average lead teacher salary in pre-K about $43,000 a year, and for assistant teachers about $20,000 a year. And yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Didn't want to hurt it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the assistant teachers, you said it's how much?
$20,190.
And is that a full-time job?
Yes, just like a teacher. They work the same schedule as a lead teacher. So 180 days plus 10 days of planning.
How are they living on $20,000 a year?
It's very difficult.
I mean, would you qualify for welfare benefits under that kind of?
It depends on your family size.
That's true.
Possibly.
It sure would.
Possibly. I will say that yes, I agree that that is a very low salary, and we really, really need assistant teachers in our pre-K classroom. It's definitely affecting retention. Now, I have to recognize that there's been a tremendous investment in assistant teacher salaries over the last 8 to 10 years, so I can't not recognize that. Pretty dramatic increases, but it's still pretty low. And I will tell you that every pre-K lead teacher I talk to, they cannot do their job without their assistant teacher. And we're seeing, more and more issues with the retention of those assistant teachers, and they're really important.
Do they receive benefits?
I believe they do if they are a public school employee. I do not. It's up to each private program if they do or not. I would think probably not at the level that they would need.
$10 an hour. Wow.
It's probably a little bit more than that because it's not a 12-month job. So they're working like a teacher, like 190 days. I don't know the hourly rate, but it is.
Well, now if they're working like a teacher, they're working almost 12
well, you're right.
hours a day.
They're working 365 days a year.
7 days a week.
Right. That's true. They're a very important part of the quality of our pre-K program.
Senator Dixon?
When was I know you said that the salary had increased quite a bit over the past decade. When was the last increase?
Every time that, when Governor Kemp did the teacher increases, they were also included in that. So they've been included in any teacher increase. So we're thankful for that, and as they are too. But their salary is still fairly low.
Yeah, it's really low.
Thank you. And you move on to the big number.
So one last add, and this was a change by the House, and it's an increase in formula funds to reflect an increase in the employer contribution for the PMPM for lead and assistant teachers for SHPP. It's an addition of $11.9 million. As you know, there was an increase in the PMPM SHPP for K-12 teachers. We also have teachers that work in the public school system, and so this just recognizes the need for that funding so they can pay their SHPP bills.
And again, tell us what PMPM stands for.
Per member per month, so it's the rate that...
Per member per month?
Yes, sir, that the state health benefit plan charges each member.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It was a pretty substantial increase this year, so we're thankful for this addition.
Austin, is that 1,500?
I think so. About
1580? 1580,
that sounds
okay,
right.
we've seen that many times.
Right.
Okay. Senator Dolzall?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to clarify on that state health benefit plan increase. I know that it's between last year and this year for K-12, it was a $1.2 billion expense to the state. Do the state health benefit plans contributions from the employees remain static after we make that contribution, or do they have any increase whatsoever under
I
that?
do not know if SHBP is increasing for employees. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Good question. I'm going to mention to the committee, if y'all would, after, because all this stuff's been thrown at us so fast. If you got questions after we all get through, or you get home on the weekend and think about it, if you would please send those to me, and Austin, and we'll try our best to get answers back to y'all. Okay, is that fair enough? Because this is kind of overwhelming, all to absorb at one time. So, okay, thank you so much. Georgia Student Finance. I looked for you in the peanut gallery over here, and then you moved on me. You ready?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good
Yes,
morning.
thank you. Ready when you are.
Yeah.
If I could work from the House tracking sheet today, that is page 98 of the House version.
Say that again.
Page 98.
98, okay. Way over. Okay.
Thank you, and thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for allowing me to be here today and present the FY24 budget. Over $1 billion in lottery dollars is reflected in the budget for Georgia Student Finance Commission this year, which will allow us to provide higher ed financial aid to a significant number of students. Our first change in our budget for FY24 is under 44.1, college completion grants. The governor's recommendation was for $10 million in funding. The House added an additional $10 million, taking those monies from the low-interest loan program to increase the needs-based grants for students in FY 2024. The next...
Now, do you know why the House added $10 million? Did you have any conversation with them on that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've spoken to the members of the House that their intent was to allow for additional aid to students that would not need to be repaid. So repurposing monies from our loan program to our grant program would allow students to receive funds to allow them to complete their education and get right out into the workforce without having to take additional debt.
Okay. Any questions from the committee on that? You're not through. I'm just asking. Okay, no. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next area is 44.2, Commission Administration. The governor's budget and the House reflect statewide changes for cost of living adjustments and other premiums that are enterprise-wide. It also reflects on 44.2.5, a reduction for administrative costs. That was due to programs that were not implemented in FY23. The governor recommended reversing those funds that were appropriated to the agency. The House in 44.2.6 is restoring that $1.6 million to the agency, but directing us to use some reserve funds that we have available to us to proceed in standing up some of those programs that we had to pause. Our next change is 44.3, dual enrollment. The governor's recommendation of $82.8 million was reduced by the House by $6.6 million based on projections for utilization in FY24, and we agree with the House's projection that $76.2 million should be sufficient, and if not, we could revisit that with the members of the General Assembly in the amended budget. The next change is 44.4, engineer scholarship. The governor's budget reflected a reduction of $315,000 to the engineering scholarship. The House has eliminated that reduction and directed student finance to utilize some reserve funds that we have available to ensure that we can provide those grants scholarships for engineering. Our next change is on page 99 under Hope Grant. The governor's budget reflected a total of $77.4 million for the Hope Grant program at a factor rate of 100% for the Hope Grant to be concurrent with the with the Zell grant amount. The House version has reduced funding by $1.9 million to reduce the award factor rate to 95% and also allow for some changes for increased out-of-pocket costs for the commercial driver's license programs at TCSG. The next change is under 44.9, Hope Scholarships for Privates. The governor's budget reflected an increase of $1.449 million for projected increased needs at our private institutions. The House has added almost $15.4 million to increase the private award rate for students that are attending private colleges from $2,977 to $3,100. And, that's the Zell private amount, and to increase the Hope private award to 95% of the Zell award, which would take that from $2,282 to $2,945. Mr. Chairman, this would be consistent with the Hope Grant and Hope Scholarship award rates that the House is recognizing of 95% of the Zell rate.
What you and I talked about this morning, about also reducing the ACT score.
No, Mr. Chairman, that's a different indicator. That would be eligibility for Zell based on that House bill that we were speaking of.
Right.
This is a funding level where a Zell award, be it grant or scholarship, is 100% of tuition. The recommendation by the House for the Hope amount would be 95% of tuition, whereas the governor's budget would be 100% for FY24.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
In 44.10, Hope Scholarships for Public Schools, the governor's recommendation was to increase the factor rate to 100% this year. The House has reduced the appropriation to $31.9 million, which would provide for 95% coverage of tuition in FY24. Line 44.11 is the Inclusive Post-Secondary Education Grant. This is a new program that has been advanced by the House via a House bill that will be in your Higher Education Committee, Mr. Chairman. Mm-hmm. And the House has added $955,000 for funding for the Inclusive Post-Secondary Education Grant in FY24. On line 44.12, low-interest loans, as I mentioned earlier, $10 million has been taken from this line item for loans and moved over to the college completion grants for grant funding instead of loan funding in FY24. Mr. Chairman, our next item is on page 100 under Reach Georgia Scholarships. This is a reflection by the House directing the agency to utilize state and other funds that we have available to us to fully fund program needs. There is no appropriation, just some direction on the utilization of some reserves that we have available to us. Under 44.17, service cancelable loans, 44.17.2 is to utilize reserve funds we have available at the agency to provide for a Georgia Military College transfer service cancelable loan. The House has indicated an add of $100,000 from our reserves to allow for a scholarship to provide students going from the junior college to University of North Georgia to complete their 4-year degree. Mm-hmm. Also in 44.17.4, there's $100,000 that we have available to us, carry over from prior years, and $140,000 additional dollars that would allow for us to establish the medical examiner loan repayment program in FY 2024. And also under 44 17.5, just direction to utilize the existing $10 million that was appropriated to us in FY22 to stand up the Behavioral Health Professionals Service Cancelable Loan Program, which the Commission Administration dollars that I spoke of earlier will allow us to implement in FY 2024. Lines 44.18, tuition equalization grants. The House indicates reducing the $315,000 that the governor's budget indicated was being transferred from the engineer scholarship. However, the House is directing in their budget recommendation the agency to utilize $2.1 million to increase the tuition equalization grant award amount from $900 to $1,000 per year for the grant in FY 2024. And Mr. Chairman, that is the entirety of the changes for the Georgia Student Finance Commission budget in FY 2024, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
You've got a lot of zeros in your numbers.
As I said earlier, over $1 billion in lottery funds and over $100 million in state funds to provide financial aid for our students to achieve their credentials and move right into the workforce.
You know, we say that, and I remember back in our little community of Statesboro, whenever the governor of Selma was trying to get the lottery passed, all the do-gooders had signs in their cars about not voting for the lottery and that blah, blah, blah type deal. And I'm sure a lot of those do-gooders have had children that have been great benefits from the lottery. So, you know, sometimes the people, you know, what we realize over time, people with real vision, and we've got a lot of people in this room that's got real vision. A lot of other people think they're crazy. But then the real vision kind of comes out, and we've got several great real vision people, and we've had some people already leave that's got real vision. So thank you for that.
Long memory, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. I just remember those signs. Senator Parent.
That was actually Senator Dixon, although
I'm sorry.
I'll just
Senator
real quick say,
okay.
I just wanted to thank the commissioner for her hard work.
Thank you.
Senator Dixon.
I just want to make a comment. I'd like to see the 44.10 back in fully fund. You know, where the House took the 5% out on the HOPE. I'd like to see that back to 100%, what the governor recommended. Okay. Just want to make that comment. Thank you.
That would be on page
44.1.
Page 99.
Hope Scholarship Public School.
Okay. You got that? Don't worry, our main man here's got it. And if he's got it, we got it. Senator?
Following Senator Dixon, the 44.9, the private schools, they made the same percentage cut there, did they not?
Yeah, you're right.
44.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, actually, the House increased the funding for the HOPE Private. They're contemplating raising the HOPE
That's up
award
15.
up. Right.
Whereas this one is down, what, 4
Correct.
million?
15.3.
Correct.
No, a lot more than 4 million, sorry. How many millions is that?
It's $15.3 million to increase the HOPE private award amount to $2,945, up from $2,282, and the Zell private award to $3,100, up from $2,977.
So that went up.
Can you go over the public school numbers again now that Senator Dixon has called our attention to it?
Certainly, Senator. The governor's recommendation was to increase the factor rate to 100% for Hope Public, which would make it equivalent to the Zell Award in FY 2024. Right. The House version reduced the Hope Award to 95%, as Senator Dixon indicated, and that's, you can see the difference from 57.9 down to 31.9 is reflective of taking it down to 95%.
And what was the percentage? If it wasn't 95%, what was it?
The governor's recommendation was 100%.
100%. Okay.
So it goes down 25.
And if I could draw your attention up to the top of the page, 44.7, Hope Grant, that is also an adjustment from 100%, which the governor's recommendation was, down to 95% that the House recommended.
So these two, the Hope Grant and the, what, Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I ask a follow-up
No,
question on
ma'am.
that? I'm
No,
on,
ma'am.
actually.
you
Just
on.
keep going. What is the reasoning behind the discrepancy in doing the 100% for the Hope Private and then the 95 for the Hope Grant and the Hope Public?
Thank you for the question, Senator Parent. In prior years, the Hope Private amount was a set amount. It was not based on something equivalent to the public amount. It was merely a set amount that was calculated and created by the General Assembly. This budget, the House is looking to have parity in the difference between the Zell amount and the Hope amount for the privates. Again, it is not 100% of the tuition because private institutions have a large spectrum of tuition amounts. So that it's merely just to follow that same logic of the Hope being 95% of the Zell award.
I see. So the real issue is more the 100 versus 95, not that the
Senator,
privates are getting more. Yes, okay.
That is correct. That is the difference between the governor's recommendation at 100% for Hope and the House's recommendation of 95%.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Great
Thank you very much,
presentation.
Mr. Chairman.
You're very welcome. University System Georgia Public Libraries.
Good morning, Chairman Hickman and
Good morning,
members of
sir.
the committee.
Yeah, good to see
I'd
you.
be remiss if I didn't start off today by thanking you all for the 23 amended budget and obviously a critical need in medical education, healthcare across Georgia. So thank you all and the whole Senate and the House for that as well. I had not planned to go line item by line item. We're starting on page 86. The USG budget goes to page 90. And section 41 would be inclusive of all those changes in items that way. So I'd be happy to address any line item that you may have a question about, but I didn't plan. There are numerous line item changes there that I didn't plan to address. But I would point out, obviously, the growth in our university system. Only really 4 institutions had growth. 2022 had declines, and that attributed a $7.5 million in formula growth for this year. A small amount, a little over $2 million in M&O grants. So from that perspective, I did want to point out certainly, once again, while we are very grateful for the COLA, the non-covered lives for the university system cost about $40 million. As we continue to struggle for affordability for our students and parents and those funding their part of education, that is coming out of the budgets, of the formula budgets there, along with inflationary pressures of utility cost and other types of M&O issues that we still struggle with. I think I pointed out to you earlier, and I don't want to really belabor this point, but the formula earns about 7.15 cents per square foot. Our costs currently are about a little over $12 to $13 a square foot. So all that has to be assumed in the education budget of the teaching budget there that's going forward, as well as utility costs, food costs, those kind of things. So if we want to maintain affordability from low tuition increases, which we would love to do, the challenges of reconciling those are getting more and more difficult as we go along. Many of the changes that you'll see on the tracking sheet really have to do with the B budget and as well as capital, and we support those and appreciate you all looking at them and contributing. Maybe I think the governor had a third, the House put another third in, and we would welcome on the capital projects for you all contributing the final third for some of those projects that have gone through the vetting process at the Board of Regents over a number of years. these institutions go through a rather rigorous process of needs-based and of facilities going forward, so we'd appreciate you looking at that as well. There's one other item that I don't know if it was an oversight or not, but the latest thing over the law enforcement COLA, going from the House did from 2,000 to 4,000, our campus law enforcement, which are becoming more and more needed, were excluded from that. Hopefully that was just an oversight, but I think we have almost 800 officers across 26 campuses, and just as your Capitol Police here cover the Capitol grounds, our law enforcement agents on our institutions, on our campuses, are the primary law enforcement there. They work with local governments and local law enforcement, but they are the primary first responders in that area. So hopefully you all will rectify that as we go forward.
Go back and just reiterate what you just said about the campus law enforcement being left out.
You want me to start at the beginning?
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. I don't need that much help. I just
I don't know.
Want you to reiterate
I
what
hope
you
it was
said.
an oversight, but they actually listed by agency many of the law enforcement agencies within state agencies of state government. We just noticed that the university system law enforcement officers on campuses were not included in that, and they upped the COLA from 2,000 to 4,000 for law enforcement officers because of retention and because of turnover in that field, and as you well know. So we would just ask that you all look at that, and I'm giving the benefit of the doubt there was an oversight, not intentional in that regard, because these law enforcement officers work, just like any police force anywhere in that regard. So take a look at that.
Senator Dozal.
Now,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chancellor. I want to ask you about line 41.18.3. Which references a 2.3% decrease in enrollment with an increase in higher cost programs. There's about a $3 million delta there between the governor's number and the House's number. My first question is if you can opine on the net result of those two differences. Obviously, we can choose anything in between or one or the other or something different. But then secondly, I'm wondering about the we keep hearing about these demographic cliffs as it relates to higher education, and essentially the birth rates from 18 to 20 years ago have decreased. And so what do you all see in the next 5 to 10 years as it relates to enrollment? How much of this is because of the demographic fall off of students in that age group, and how much of this is just students choosing something other than traditional 4-year higher education?
Senator, I've attributed most of the decline in enrollment to the workforce and the traditional students coming out and being able to get a $20 to $25 an hour job and say, why should I pay you to go to college when I can make this kind of money they've never made before? I think a lot of that's there. The good news is we're seeing some resurgence this spring semester here over the fall, and from a growth perspective, greater than we had expected in that regard. I don't know, just because of the demographics that you mentioned, less 18-year-olds coming out of high school over the next 5 years, that we'll be able to recover totally, but we do see more sense there. I think, again, the type of information we're giving from a marketing perspective, the online opportunities, meeting these kids, we're trying to market to these young people to say it's not if or, it can be both. You can take that job and you can go to college and get that degree, because in 4 to 5 years, I do believe that you'll be, when you look going into management, you'll be expected to have a degree in that regard. So we think the numbers will be challenging for the future, but that's why we have to be very efficient in many of our areas, all of our areas going forward in that way. On 18.3, yes.
There's essentially a $3 million difference between these high-cost program areas, and I'm just curious if you would advocate. Would you like to see that added back, or are you comfortable with the House's number there?
Yeah. So actually, if you look at 18.5, what the House did is they just netted those two numbers. There was a correction made in the amended, and when it was carried forward into 24, they kept it separately, but the House just merged those together. So there's actually a small $8,000 adjustment, and that's because of a calculation error. But overall, our ask is what's being provided.
Great, thank you.
Senator Kirkpatrick has a question.
Thank you, Chancellor, and appreciate you not going through every line item. But I just wanted to confirm that I made an accurate statement that you guys are in support of the request by the Holocaust Commission.
The Holocaust Commission is a pass-through agency. We support that increase. And I would also say for the $2 million for the GFA that we also support that increase for our scholars there at the veterinary school. We think, as Senator Walker mentioned, I think that's a good investment. It's been a great return, over $700 million in revenue coming into the state with our scholars there, the eminent scholars. It's making a huge difference, so we would support that as well.
I just ask you a question, and this affects all of us, and I don't know if I'm sitting here thinking about, with Plant Vogtle coming online, and we all know that all of our electric bills and all are going to go up. Have y'all, I'm sure y'all have planned for that in your budget situation.
Well, when you have a 30 to 40%, which is a literal increase, it's very difficult to plan for that. Exactly. When your M&O formula earnings stay the same. That's the point I've been making. When your earnings stay the same, when your paycheck's the same, and your utility costs go up 30 to 40%, it has to be found somewhere, and that's the challenge that we're finding in meeting our M&O, as well as the other challenges of keeping keeping tuition and fees very, very limited in any kind of growth.
Well, thank you, sir. Yeah, Senator Parent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chancellor Perdue. Question on that, you're expecting a 30% increase in utilities?
We have literally not expecting. That has been the annual. In fact, it has come from some of our larger institutions that have done all the cool things regarding energy conservation.
Yeah, Georgia Tech,
Georgia Tech and University of Georgia literally demonstrated to us that theirs, and it's been essentially rate, not the usage. They showed us numbers where the usage kilowatts have gone down, as do with gas cost and power cost. If rates have gone up to that degree. I was shocked when I said 30 to 40% couldn't be true, but that's what they've demonstrated.
How much of that, so in the Vogtle, we got charged the CWIP, which I think the universities have paid and the public schools have paid CWIP under that, SB 31, I think it was from 10, 12 years ago. But those additional costs have not yet fully been factored in.
That's probably true.
So you don't know, of course, how much of it could be attributable to the cost overruns at Vogtle.
Well, I think the rate that's been approved by the Public Service Commission is already factored in. That was the pay-as-you-go kind of provision for Vogtle in that regard. So it's been rate increases. We've looked at their utilization to make sure they're being as efficient as possible. The utilization literally on gas and power has gone down with the rates have made these increases.
Well, that's a pretty shocking statistic, and it's
just
unfortunate that Plant Vogtle, as a general matter, went so far, past due dates and over budget.
Trust me, I'm very familiar. I was promised when we did that it would be finished in 17 with a budget of $17 million.
Well, I was here as an aide in the Senate then, and I listened to the testimony that said this will never happen the way they're projecting. So I've been very interested in that ever since. Thank you.
Senator Walker.
Chancellor, is it not true that global energy prices have increased dramatically? Not just energy cost in Georgia.
Certainly, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll figure out later why you asked that question. Senator Orr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chancellor Perdue. This is not a change at all, but I wonder if you could, under teaching, 41.18.6, decreasing the funds for the Augusta University of Georgia Medical Partnership expansion. Just the background on that, because the governor, of course, made a $2.5 million cut.
That was one of the startup funds there for the increase going in the Athens campus there, and once the earnings from those from the formula should pick up in that. That's why that was. This was prior to going from 40 to 60 students. This was helping that on the front end, understanding that would come out when those students had begun earning their formula.
Understood. Thank you. I know that's kind of going back in time because that's been in there since the
that's right.
governor's budget.
Right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chancellor, you have anything else?
No, sir. We appreciate it again. Thank you for your consideration and the B budget and the capital. Again, I would encourage you all to look at what the House did and potentially finish up some of those capital requests that are needed there. They've gone through a good vetting process.
Any further questions before we let him go?
Just one thing. I would imagine that you firmly support the cohort of 3 eminent scholars in the veterinary program.
I do indeed. Again, what we were said today, bringing in $50 million, is that they come as a team and to sponsor the equipment that's needed there. Avian flu. If you've bought any eggs lately, avian flu is the cause for your price of eggs right now. It's a tremendous disease. It's very devastating. We all know what the poultry industry means to Georgia, and if Georgia could be in the lead of providing a solution to avian flu, that'd be tremendous.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate your time. Technical College System, Georgia.
Good morning.
Good morning. Morning.
TCSG is on page 103, section 46. And while y'all are turning, like the Chancellor, would just like to thank you for the supplemental budget and all the hard work there.
Thank you, sir. We ready?
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'll go fairly quickly through the first couple of sections. Section 46.1, Adult Education, 46.2, Departmental Administration, and 46.3, Economic Development and Customized Services, all represent just the statewide changes, which include the $2,000 as well as a $2,000 raise, as well as the merit system, TeamWorks, and insurance adjustments. The first real change in the budget outside of statewide changes is in section 46.4 Quick Start, which is near the bottom of that first page. We'll skip down to the first item that goes beyond the statewide changes, which is the last item in that area, 46.4.5, which is the removal of one-time money for the design of the EV facility related to Quick Start. That's $6.25 million. That was put in last year to do the design. This will be taking it back out because of that one-time funding. The next section, 46.5, Quick Start Special Projects. That's a new program that the House included, and that's to provide funds to provide a Quick Start style program for healthcare shortages across the state. The idea around there would be to kick this off with 2 employees and some operating funds to truly focus on strengthening partnerships and streamlining education and training across the state and in both rural and global, but really connecting TCSG to the local colleges, to the healthcare providers, and to K-12 to make sure as we look at that dual enrollment CNA pathway into the technical colleges, the LPN and RN pathway into the healthcare needs that are out there. It also is in conformance with the governor's healthcare workforce task force that Commissioner Noggle had this summer and made recommendations. And this is something that Chairman Parrish had looked at and had asked for us to provide some data, and this was a result of that conversation, really trying to connect dots in the rural areas.
So was this a budget number that you produced to the House, or is that?
We did, Mr. Chairman, and I believe Austin has that as well now, and we'll make sure if he doesn't, we get that to him.
Do that. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Round dollars kind of scare me.
Yes, sir. I understand. The next item is on the next page on 104, and that's 46.6, and that's in technical education. Once again, the first 4 items are related to those statewide changes. The item outside of statewide changes is 46.6.5, and that's to remove one-time money for MR&R funds for Southeastern Technical College. That was put in by the Senate last year as a one-time funding and has been taken out by the governor and the House. The next item, 46.6.6, is a...
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, sir.
Give us, because our illustrious Chairman of Appropriation, tell us why that $500,000 taken out.
Yes, sir. That was one-time money put in to do some roof repairs and other things to Southeastern. Those have been done now, so it's taken back out.
Okay, okay.
And he should be well aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. The next item is actually our formula funding, and this year it produced a negative number. We lost 3.5% in credit hours, which was a $9.2 million reduction. We have a slight increase in square footage, which that rate's $3.72 a square foot, which had an increase of $315,000, which netted a $8.9 million reduction. The next item, the House put in a new item, and that's 46.6.7, and it's to provide to cover some of the high-cost, high-demand areas such as aviation, CDL, and nursing. That's $8.2 million, and just to give you an idea, those are some of those areas that both bodies and the governor's been asking us to look at in our formula. Our formula doesn't cover the full cost of those high-demand programs, which obviously with the workforce needs across the state are growing every year. So we appreciate the House's support in increasing money to support those high-cost programs as we expanded at $8.2 million.
Mr. Dozier, Senator Sims has a question before.
Yes.
We'll go with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to go back to provide funds for a quick start style program to address healthcare shortages throughout the state, and that was 46.5.1, and we are adding an additional $325,000. Is there a way to do this without creating another program or adding additional personnel on? Because we already have quick start programs.
Yes, ma'am. Quick Start is, as you're aware, every new company that comes into the state,
right,
that's a component that economic development uses to incentivize companies to relocate.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the vision by Chairman Parrish over there was to actually have a boots on the ground in the state, helping no matter if it's a hospital or a local doctor's office, trying to set up. For example, if a new doc was setting up and needed the support staff trained very quickly, that there would be an arm in the state that could help that with health care across the state, especially in rural areas.
But do we have that already? I mean, that's my...
Yep.
We tend to, once there's a study committee and there's a new approval of something or somebody has another idea,
yep,
we add additional monies to fund that and on, which
right,
I don't think is necessary. Well, that's my personal opinion.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't. I think that, and I do understand the importance of Quick Start programming. It's across the state. We tend to already have it. And if there are people in place that can do this already, then, just maybe we need to just add one person with that expertise rather than creating a whole new program or a whole new standalone building where you have to pay for rent and personnel and all of those things.
Yeah, I don't believe that's the intention. I do believe the intention is to not get it lost in the recruitment side of companies coming here, and the intention was to set it apart so that it's something in-state,
Mhm.
helping that local shortage that we're all seeing across the state as we really try to make sure our nursing shortage and our doctors' offices have support going forward. I do believe there would be to fully execute it, it would actually need some support in the future if we're talking about free training like Quick Start does for companies that are coming in.
Well, let me give you an example of what we've done in Southwest Georgia. The hospital
Mhm.
and the technical college are very, very close. The partnership is just unbelievable. And the high schools even, the College and Career Academy, to do just this thing, to address the nursing shortage along with medical personnel. And we just all got together, decided that this is what we wanted to do, grow our own. I think we missed something when we just say we just need to add more and more, but that's my personal
Yes,
opinion.
ma'am.
We'll see how it works out.
And I will applaud that effort by Phoebe and the technical college down there,
Yes,
as
sir.
well as in Augusta. We have a great partnership with Piedmont.
Right.
And those are things that are going to make a difference.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Continue, sir.
Jumping back to the second page in technical education, the next item is 46.6.8, and it's a program that the House has added called Tools for Success. That is modeled after a program down at Oconee Fall Lines. The idea here is Oconee Fall Lines has a fund that is supported locally that gives someone the tools when they leave. As you know, we have an 86% infield placement rate, as well as a 99% success factor on folks moving on in education and in jobs. The idea here would be to mirror that in all 22 colleges at $50,000 per college, with a requirement of an additional $50,000 in monies being generated by donations and gifts. And that way, when we have folks that are either an entrepreneur, in aviation, nursing, automobile mechanics, just numerous areas, when they leave, not only are they job ready, but they're job ready with the tools they need, because so many of these are independent contractors. Then in order to have success, they need to have the tools when they walk out. So that is the vision here. Once again,
is that just, are y'all just, the intent to just get you Technical College, Southeastern Tech, Savannah Tech, $50,000, so y'all use it, or do they have to requisition and provide y'all proof of what they're going to use it for?
yes, it would have to be modeled off of what Oconee Fall Lines does. The $50,000 would have to have a matching amount before they got it.
Okay.
And also the students would have to apply for why they needed it and what job they're going to use it in. So it's really the job-ready workforce preparation is what the vision here is by the House.
Good, thank you.
Yes, sir. The next item is 46.6.9, and it's to just recognize the $22 million in repairs and major repairs and renovation. It's not really different from the House. It's just a recognition. Last year, the governor and the General Assembly took money that was bonds, $22 million, placed it in the base of our budget, and this is just a recognition of that money that was put in there last year, and just a reminder that it is in the base, and that's where we fund our repairs and maintenance and renovation. The next section is 46.7 on workforce development. We have the first item is just the $2,000 cost of living. I say just, that's a big one. Thank you. The next item is 46.7.2, and it is $897,000 that the governor recommended and the House supported for the recruitment of the EV industry. This is connected to the Hyundai project that's in Bryan County, and this provides the funding for us to recruit those folks who are coming in to work for that company as they start up. 46.7.3 is a transfer of money from One Georgia Authority to us. That has been an ongoing grant from One Georgia Authority in the amount of $250,000. The governor was recommending, instead of continuing to apply for that grant, that money just be appropriated in the base. Those monies go to our colleges that are located alongside bases across the state, and as returning men and women come back to our communities, it's money that goes toward giving them training for the skill for the job they're going to have when they leave the service. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Senator Dixon. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Senator Orr.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Commissioner. On that workforce development, the 46.7.2, customized recruitment for workforce to support the expanding electric vehicle industry, and of course, this was the governor's recommendation, which the House supported, but that is specifically for the one.
Yes, ma'am.
Facility Hyundai.
That's part of the incentive package that the state agreed to when Hyundai came here, and so that's one of those components.
And just let me ask: is that a typical expenditure that we're actually putting state dollars into the recruitment, the workforce recruitment?
Yes, ma'am. And many of the projects, when we bring them to the state, part of that incentive package includes recruitment dollars. You've typically seen that in the Department of Labor's budgets, why it may seem new to TCSG. If you recall, last year, employment services was transferred from Department of Labor to TCSG.
Yes.
And so this is the component that you would typically have seen over there prior to that transfer. So that's why it may seem new in TCSG's budget. But yes, ma'am, most of the incentive packages include a component to go out and recruit that new workforce that's coming in to start up that company. And that's what this represents for Hyundai.
And as far as that function being moved over under your watch, what is planned or contemplated or has already happened in terms of, well, it would be very early to assess, but going forward, fair amount of questions were asked about the capacity of TSG to do.
Sure.
To take that on, which is a bit out of your wheelhouse. Arguably. And is there an assessment process as planned?
Yeah, I mean, it's still too early to tell. We're still in the process of moving that, as you may or may not know. That went into effect July 1st. The governor sent a letter December 15th transferring that responsibility to TCSG as the state actor for that. We're still in that transition phase with Commissioner Bruce Thompson.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's still in an ongoing process. I believe it's going to work well, but obviously we're still in that middle of that process, so it's kind of hard to give you an update other than to say that obviously we believe we'll be able to handle that job and we'll do it well, just as we did when this body and a prior governor moved WIOA over to TCSG years ago, and that's that training money as far as the Work Innovation Opportunity Act. And we've had great success in that area, and I believe we'll continue with that great success as this transitions over.
And the dollar amount of that transfer?
The employment services transfer, it was $7 million in state dollars and about another $22 million in federal dollars, so right at $30 million.
That's the transfer of this particular?
Employment services, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I don't see any. Nope. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And one of our last but not least is Department of Education. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. Thank you. I'm going to be going through the House tracking sheet, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
Which is in 24.1, page 47.
47?
Yes, sir. Page 47.
Okay.
Well, just as one of the subsets. Yeah. 47.
Okay, sir.
All right, and I'll discuss the significant changes, some of the significant changes the House made. If you have any questions on any of those, feel free to ask.
Okay, sir.
First one, I'll start out in the Business and Finance Administration, 24.2.5. There's $60,000 for funds for a state special program coordinator pursuant to House Bill 87, which is in this session. I believe we will probably communicate with Austin. We believe that's a full-time position, so we would request approximately about $150,000 to increase that to that. The next significant change I would mention is the 24.3.7, which is providing funds for plasma games for statewide rollout and evaluate usage and effectiveness for 1 year. This is, my understanding, is an online instructional tool to learn advanced subjects. It appears that there's about 30 districts that have currently been utilizing this for free, and this this grant would, or this contract actually would allow all middle and high school students to utilize this program.
I knew we had this question coming, so Senator Sims.
Yes, sir. My money for a greenhouse in Calhoun County has just disappeared.
Oh, yes, ma'am. That those were one-time funds to.
We've already
purchased.
All right. I just want to make sure my money. So they're building the building as we speak.
Yes, that's my understanding. They should be.
Thank you, ma'am. Please continue.
Okay.
Oh,
Next, I'll go to 24.4.5, Charter Schools Program. There's a $1.7 million increase for the charter facility grants pursuant to House Bill 430. This is to provide, the bill actually is to provide $100,000 for each facility. We've been working the last few years to get that number up. I believe last year was $86,000 per facility. This should bring them all up to the $100,000. Next significant change I'll mention will be in the non-QBE formula grants, 24.11.6. There's a $200,000 increase to the feminine hygiene grant due to inflation and increased enrollment. In our nutrition program, 24.12.5, this is an increase in funds for school nutrition. This is going to allow the state to pick up the reduced portion of the free and reduced lunch for all the students in Georgia. And this is $6.3 million. All right, next I'll go to our QBE program. Next significant is 24.17.12. There is a increase of funds for a salary supplement of $1,000 to all custodians. This is about $8.75 million add to our budget. It's my understanding that it says a $1,000 supplement would be included in QBE so that it would continue each fiscal year, not as a one-time thing. The last in CTAE program, we've got two adds, 24.23.6 and 23.23.7. The first one is a $711,000 add to the construction industry certification program. And the next one is to provide funds for a construction-ready pre-apprenticeship program, and I believe this is relation to Hyundai as well. And that's for $1 million. And that's the significant changes that I have noted.
Oh, there it is, yeah, 24.23.7 on page 52.
Yes.
I know, and I think the community members in this room know that the even though we're taking the money out because of Coastal Plains and Mountain Ed,
Yes, sir.
that's because the charters are running out June the 30th, and I know I do, and several other members fully support those schools continuing, and we've got a House bill that we're all working with, and I think it should come over in the next few days or so. So those numbers may change.
Yeah, that's
and
my
so
understanding.
I think that any of us that are familiar with those charter schools are very supportive of that, and so that I think there's some. I'm probably talking off. Should not talk, but the way I understand going forward is the recommendation is to be funded at the QBE level plus $1,400, some type of other number. So for the committee, those numbers will probably change because of the importance of those schools. Do you have any comments about that?
Then my colleague may. It's my understanding that bill, in talking with the House, they echoed the same, that those reductions, there may be some kind of a change once the new House Bill 87 is.
That's right, and I think we're working very closely with the House on that and so forth, and Representative Irwin, Chairman Irwin on that. So I'm probably speaking out of turn, but I just wanted the committee to know, if they did not know, I wanted them to know that that's a very sensitive issue for a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got a lot of blinking lights, and let's go to number 14 is Senator Sims.
I wanted to ask about the Foothills schools. Are those residential schools? High schools?
Those schools.
They're not.
You want to address it, or you want me to address it?
You go ahead.
Okay, those schools, as I understand it, and I've been through a couple of the Coastal Plains schools.
Mm-hmm.
Those schools are for children that have dropped out of regular schools, and they go to school at night. that go to school from 6 to 10 at night, and it's
Yes, sir.
only high school students. In our area, in Bullitt County, we had 140 kids in school that went to school at night. One of them, I talked to 3 different children when I went and visited. One of them lived with his grandmother, helped support his grandmother, worked at a car wash, and had dropped out of school for that reason and went to school from 9 to 12 at night. Talked to a young lady that had a 3-year-old child that lived with her mother, and her mother worked during the daytime, and consequently she had to stay home with the child. When the mother came home, she then went to school from 6 to 10 at night. At the first graduation class in Bullitt County, there were 14 graduates. 13 responded back. Of those 13 that responded back, one had got married, one was in the military, and the other that leaves, well, anyway, had 5 that was enrolled at East Georgia College, and 5 that was enrolled at Geisha Technical College. Now, and I think the overall graduation rates for the whole area is about 45 to 50%, is what I understand. But this represents about 6,000 students at these different campuses and all.
My only ask is we do not have any of those in Southwest Georgia. I
And
don't
that's
know.
a-
And that was one of the promises made. And I'm expecting this very soon, that we can do it without having to build another
That's right.
building. We have plenty schools that are vacant after school, regular school hours, day hours.
And I
So
think
we can
that
do it.
when I was referring to pockets a few minutes ago about pockets
Yes,
here
sir.
and pockets there, that's a pocket that
Yes,
we're
sir.
very, very concerned about, and that's what we're working on.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you, Senator.
You're very
And
welcome.
Thank you.
We got a couple more blinking lights, and let's go, since he's been quiet, let's go to number 5, Senator Dixon. No.
Thank you. House Bill 87 is sitting in my committee. Those charter schools are very important to me. I intend on moving on that legislation and hoping that we will add that funding back in. Very important to me. And then Senator Sims would love to work with you on getting a school opened up in Southwest Georgia. There is a need over there. Would love to help with that in any way that I can.
Senator Sims, the big thing about that, and keep in mind that what I said, what was said, those students are dropouts. And that have decided to go back to school and finish their education. Big deal.
We can do a regional one. It does not have to just meet in one particular county.
No, like in the one that I'm familiar with, Coastal Plains, they have like probably 12 or 15 different campuses that kind of go along the coastal area. Now, the other 2 in North Georgia, I'm not very familiar with them, but it's not just one school, one location. Okay. And the children do, and I keep referring to children, I should say students, and the students do cross county lines. Candler County, for instance, have students from Emmanuel County that come to them because Emmanuel County does not have one of these schools. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Senator Orrick.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just quickly, 24.236 and .237, the construction industry certification and the ad that the House made. How is that contemplated that will be? Where's that going to be fit in the department? And I mean, where is that a certification that's going to be? Just explain that to me. I have questions from constituents about how to get that training.
Yeah, it's my understanding this is to increase some of that certification out there, and I can provide. I believe I got something this morning on that, and I can send that over to Austin this afternoon.
Great. So it's an increase
in
already ongoing.
Yes, with the construction
certification
one. And the other one, I believe, is a pre-apprenticeship program for the Hyundai, related to the Hyundai plant. So that's in it. Yeah, the $1 million.
They keep on coming back for another bite at the apple. up in here getting money added in the house. Didn't get enough.
Senator Parent.
you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. One thing that I'm confused about, and was hoping you could set me straight, is do we have funding in this budget for the statewide dyslexia coordinator?
I do not believe it was added in there. Correct. No, it was not.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that's a huge problem that we've got the statewide dyslexia coordinator funding, that's a position that currently exists, is missing from this budget.
Yes, ma'am. I didn't realize that either. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm because
Thank you for
I'd
pointing
heard
that
a
out.
rumor about that and
Yeah.
thought that was an issue. So, thank you. And that's, I think, normally about $168,000 appropriation.
I believe it was about 168. Yes.
So without that money, we will have to let that position go, right, when we're trying to do this work on literacy.
Correct.
I believe. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
We
you.
don't have the funding.
Yeah, I don't understand. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm confused about that.
Why don't you address that? You can't
Oh,
address it.
you have info?
You can't, okay. Anybody else have any questions? Sir Davenport.
What dyslexia?
No, number 12, excuse me. Very good.
Put it on another department. Special needs, it can fall under another department, right?
Well, I don't think it fell under another department, under that, it was put into the budget and.
You might come into the
I believe it was in the budget in fiscal year '22, and the work was still ongoing, so for fiscal year '23, the budget instructed us to continue to use the funds that we had on hand for fiscal year '23. Those funds are now completely expended, and so the question is, does that carry over to fiscal year '24, or do we need to ask for those funds again for fiscal year '24?
I would love to get an answer to those questions, Mr. Chairman. I mean, especially considering all the good work that you and
We will.
Senator from the 45th did on our literacy hearings.
Yeah, we will follow up on that.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody have any other questions? You've got about 4 minutes left. So does anybody else have anything, any comments or anything? Well, thank y'all. It's been a very, very productive morning, and thank you committee members for being here.
You're welcome.
You're very welcome.
That's what I'm